Well, hello there, everyone, and Merry Christmas season to you. We are coming to the Real Life Conversations for Christian Coaches podcast, and we're so glad you're here. My name is Teresa McCloy.
I'm Erica Benson, and we do pray that your Advent season is blessed as you are just noticing the ways you're moving towards Christmas.
And that's what we're going to talk about today, Erica. We had kind of come around this idea. It's a little bit of play off of even last week's episode. We just want to talk about this idea of making room. And what does that look like to make room this Christmas? Opening up of space that you might be in. I actually was doing a little bit of research, and when I thought about this topic of making room, there's so many songs that have that line in them, that have that play on prepare him room and joy to the world, the classic Christmas carol. But I just wonder, before we dive in, Erica, when you think of that phrase making room, what's it bring up for you?
Oh, making room for me is like an exhale. When you think about creating space, which is part of what it is for me, it offers an invitation for a pause. And so
Mhm.
it reminds me of just catching your breath and the anticipation that comes when we're actually able just to be present. So making room is about preparations and just being intentional.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about it today on this podcast from three or four different ways. And for those of you listening in, we're usually talking through the lens of both your being and your doing. So, how are you connecting to your inner life and then your outer life? And on this particular podcast, we're really talking about that outer life being how you show up in the work you do as a professional, helping others, whatever that might look like. You might call yourself a coach or spiritual director, a consultant. There's so many ways that you might be listening to others. But today we're really going to talk about it from three or four different ways that you might show up and make room. Simplicity. You talked about pause. I think of simplicity. What would I want to be simpler around this Christmas season? And how would I want to lean into that? So let's talk first about this idea of making room both in the being and the doing side. What do you think of when you think of the being side of making room in your inner life?
Making room for me in this season reminds me of waking up early and opening my blinds before the sun is up and just anticipating the new day, knowing that I can't see the light yet, but I know it's coming. And it just feels like a gift. Nobody's emailing or calling. It's just God and I. And it's almost like this added bonus in the day just to really be present in that moment of what's coming.
It's funny that you mentioned that. I literally just got off a call with a client and she was discerning. She won't have her business open between Christmas and New Year. And she was discerning, how much do I want to work in that week? And she goes, I think I'd like to do a couple of hours, a couple of mornings a week. My favorite time of day is usually from 5 to about 6:30. I normally light a candle, turn on a YouTube video of, right now it's Christmas scene and all of that, open my blinds and sit in the dark. And I actually do about an hour of work first, which might be counterintuitive of what we hear in spiritual life. But that for me releases me to be totally present to my
Mm.
time from maybe 6:30 to quarter after 7, something like that, that I want to spend with God. Part of my probably type 3 moving forward Enneagram piece, but her and I were talking about that, and she goes, "That's me too. I'm glad to hear you say that because I need to get that out of the way. If not, it's distracting me because I'm like going, oh, I need to do this and I need that. Whereas I just do it in the quiet of the morning where it feels very peaceful and uninterrupted, then I can move into my time. And so, whatever that being looks like for you, even in this Christmas season, yeah, lean into what your soul needs to do If you need to do some work early in the morning in the quiet of the day or late in the evening, like, don't put the guilt on yourself of, oh, I should be, you know, do it, check the box, get it done, and then move on into the making room space of where you could be.
I love what you're saying because it really gives permission to be present to how you're wired
Mhm,
and what you need
mhm.
as you create. And, we're talking about that making room for your time with the Lord. So
Yeah.
that's great. Yes.
Well, let's talk about the other side. So that's a little bit of the being. How do you want to make room? But it leads us into kind of making room on the doing side, which is room in your, I'll use the word schedule or calendar. We talk about stewarding time a lot. And what could you pre decide? We're recording this. We're about to the middle of the month. That's kind of my marker a lot of times of how I'm moving into the last half of December. And so as you're thinking about what that schedule looks like, what do you want to make room for? Let's talk a little bit about that and how we might move into more of the actionable. And we're not talking about work. We're just talking about the fullness of what a holiday season, a Christmas season, a New Year season is.
Well, making room kind of in this doing space, even personally, looks like lowering expectations for me. So knowing that because of the abundance, my capacity may not be the same. And so I want to give myself greater margin. I also want to give myself permission to be able to say a yes if there's an invitation,
Mhm.
but also with the freedom to say if something changes and it's a priority for me, I have the freedom to say, "Not right now. Thank you, and I'm not able to make it." But really to be able to be present to the invitations, but not hold them with expectations and really meet them with expectancy.
Yeah, I love that. Like the ability to say, not right now or not yet is always, I think, a key phrase that you live by. It's one of your mottos or your values. I think there is so much activity that maybe a brain dump of, okay, what are all the things? How
Mhm.
many things do I want to go to? We were talking before we hit record. I have on my bucket list this year to make it to the Fox Theater to see some type of production at the Fox. Erica went last night and saw King and Country. I'm trying not to be envious because that's not a good thing, but it's on my bucket list. And I've looked at several different shows, but I want to make room for some things that are memories for Dale and I to do together. I want to make room for what are the family activities. So you might brain dump that using one of our tools, the mind map. You might put a circle in the center and say Christmas activities and just all the things that are possible. Maybe you like to go see the lights. You like to attend Christmas Eve or Christmas Day service and pre decide some of those things. We've been talking in our family already, and maybe your family is way ahead of ours of what does Christmas Eve look like? What does Christmas Day look like? Who's going where, when, not waiting till the week before, but trying to pre decide some of those things. What are we having for the meals? What can we simplify or what do we want to expand on? All those are types of things that I think the more that you can pre decide, then the more that you can also begin to sit with emotionally, which we talked about last week. What are some feelings that are going to come from some of those places? Is there going to be sadness? Is there going to be joy? Is there going to be somebody missing around the table? And so you've decided to do some things differently, and you really need to work through that. We have a tool we often talk about, the now tool of noticing what that is, opening to head, heart, body, and then whether that's through journaling or whatever, but then give a response to that. So you're ready for those experiences or the lack of something that you've always done. Making room in your schedule, I think, is probably one of the biggest things that can be helpful.
And making that room in your schedule offers you the opportunity to say a spontaneous yes to something fun that
Hmm.
pops into your calendar that you may not have been anticipating. And I think the other thing that you just were weaving in there, Teresa, that's so important is communication. So
Mm.
if something's going to be different, name it. If you're not able to make something, name it. If you want to host something and create something new, name it and say it out loud. But that communication really can be freeing for us just of how we're approaching the holidays.
Well, let's look at the next place that we might want to make room. Faith, making room for God. What is a way that you want to connect to the whole reason for the season? And making room for God, I think one of the ways I think about it, it is receiving it, it's not striving for it. So we talked about it again last week on the episode, but how can I be softer? How can I be gentler with myself to create space
Mm.
for places with God? So my early morning space that I talked about earlier is one of my biggest connections to preparing room. And it's usually through something I'm reading through in the Advent season, something that's really joyful for me in the last few years when I think about making room for God is as I have learned more and more about the church calendar year over the last 10 years of my life and leaning into Advent. Christmas is kind of the beginning of some things. And if you follow the church calendar year and follow an Advent reading or Advent weeks, it goes clear into January. And that for me has been a real opening of even just how my body receives my experience with my faith in this season is just to lean into Christmas is a part of the entire season, not the end all be all of, oh, on Christmas Day, I switch gears and now I'm into the new year and I'm into it feels like it carries over, which feels really good for me because one of my favorite weeks of the year is actually the week between Christmas and New Year. And the joy and the openness and the room that there is for all kinds of just downtime and conversation. And then my one of my favorite months of the year is actually January. So it
Mm.
leads into me to that. So my making room for God is a space and following it all the way through.
I love the season of Advent, Christmas, and then you're talking about Christmas tide after as well, and just the freedom of a new beginning. And so for me, this year especially, I've really open handedly kind of walked into this. Our church did an Advent devotional that I've been reading. I usually, for the past several years, have used Ruth Haley Barton's Advent Reflections as a companion. It's a very short little
Mm.
weekly devotional, but it's so deep and the scriptures are rich. And so I'll use that and I write as I'm led to write and just feel drawn to connect with God in that way. We talked about it, that morning space is the best time for me in that rather than moving in and seizing the day, it's that salve diem, greet the day. And so that practice has been one I want to continue even beyond the Christmas holiday and the Christmas tide.
So when you think about making room for God as you're listening in, it's just maybe one thing. Maybe it's we're going to take in a Christmas Eve service this year. We've not ever done that before. And maybe that's the one way that you're going to open up to God in this place. So it's not all the things. This morning, I actually took a picture. I'm always open to all day long from the time my feet hit the floor, like, God, what's the moment that you're showing me today? And sometimes that moment comes really early, like within 10 minutes of when I get up. And it did today. And it's interesting that you've mentioned it too. And I just took a picture. It's the one I post every day on social media of my extraordinary moment. And here I am in an ordinary morning, still in the robe and the slippers, and let the dog out, come in, light the candle that's on our kitchen table, open the blinds. And I just stood back and waiting for the coffee to get done. And I looked at just that scene. It just was that winter scene out the window, and the candle was the only glow in the room. And I don't know, it just took my breath away a little bit of like, wow, this is space that I get. And I think some of that yesterday was a hard day. My Google email got hacked yesterday. And so it had been a hard day. I mean, it took about 2 or 3 hours to get everything fixed back up. And I was thankful for all the friends that were like, hey, did you you've been hacked? I'm like, yes, I know, and I got to fix it. But that took an extra time out of my day and made me work a little bit later into the evening, actually right up until I went to bed last night. And so I went to bed a little bit different space and woke up this morning and took a deep breath. And then there was this moment where I just felt like I needed to make some room to
Mm.
just stand there for a little bit and pause. And so when you think about making room, it may be making room on the being side, making room in your schedule, making room in relationships, making room for God. What are you invited to? I guess this is, for me, Erica, an episode where we're giving an invitation more than we are
Mm.
anything.
Yeah. I think making room also, we're certainly talking about things that we can engage with and do. And making room sometimes is letting go of
Hmm.
something for a season. And it's not about that forever, but it is that, we mentioned the phrase not right now. So, what for now can I entrust to God or lay down to create space for God, me
Mm.
to see God in fresh ways in this season?
Letting go might be exactly what you need to hear today. So, we want to wrap this episode mentioning a couple of things as we move into January. Next week, we'll have an episode for you that's been a tradition for me over the past 5 years. When we move into January, we'll actually be moving into the 6th year of this podcast, which is crazy to me. But every year at Christmas, whatever day of the week it falls on, I share just a Christmas episode of a song that I wrote years ago and give a little intro to it from my perspective this year. And so that'll be our episode next week. If that blesses you, tune in. And so I'll share a little bit of that next week. And then we'll be back in between Christmas and New Year's to do a little bit of a reflection of the year and our year, and then inviting you into a process of looking back and looking forward. And then we'll dive in 2026 with some brand new episodes and new topics and all the things for great conversation for Christian coaches, how you show up in the work that God has called you to do. So, Erica, wow, we've wrapped up a year and a season. And it's been such fun to have you as a co host all year. And just as we grow together in hosting this podcast. So thanks for being on the journey with me, friend.
Oh, it's been a joy.
Just remember, to all of you out there listening, that every ordinary day has an extraordinary moment. And we just pray that you'll have several of those moments over the next few weeks. Just look for them, just notice and pause in that moment and make room for that space. We will see you live in a couple of weeks with our episode in between. If you want to connect with us, just go to our website at therealifeprocess.com, join our free community, and you will find us there. Have a great week, everyone.
Merry Christmas, everyone.